Yeah.
Yeah, this is a relaxed deal, so my feet are going to be right up here on the table while I'm talking to you. So,
Okay.
However you want to chillax.
Nice. Okay. Yeah. No, it's good. Yeah. That sounds good.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Daily Carry Podcast, episode 63 today, and we're excited to have guests with us today, House Representative Max Brooks. Glad to have you with us here this morning, sir.
Well, I'm real happy to be here. Thank you. Honored.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate it. And by the way, I don't know if this, if this matters to you, if everybody says this to you, but this is my first podcast.
What?
This is number one for me. 63 for you, number one for me. So
Awesome.
yeah, honored to be here.
Well, honored for this to be your first podcast.
Well, then
sir.
your signature gets to be extra big on the wall.
That's right.
That's awesome.
So, Max, tell us a little bit about what you do. Tell us a little bit about Max Brooks.
Sure. Well, House District 45, first of all, because I don't expect, a lot of people to kind of have all that geography kind of in their head. So it's Castle Rock. And so I serve in Colorado legislature, in the House of Representatives. There are 65 of us in the House of Representatives. I'm in House District 45. That's Castle Rock. And it does not include Castle Pines. Okay. A lot of people just automatically lump Castle Pines into that district. That actually is House District 39, which is Brandy Bradley, fierce conservative warrior, good friend as well. Also, my district includes South Pinery and Pradera. But so pretty much it's Castle Rock. Also, probably worth mentioning that still I am carrying my final term, my final year for Castle Rock Town Council. So I had been elected to Castle Rock Town Council about 3 years ago, a little over 3 years ago, and then was kind of I don't want to say bullied, but I was told I needed to run for House District, and I pushed back against it for a while, and then won. Colorado or the Colorado Constitution doesn't prohibit you from holding two offices at the same time. Generally speaking, though, it's pretty common that a municipality would say, no, you can't hold two offices. Castle Rock, their charter allows for it. So I'm honoring my supporters, my voters, and finishing out my final year in Castle Rock Town Council while also serving House District 45. And there's obviously some symmetry there since House District 45 is just Castle Rock. Then it kind of makes sense. I don't have another municipality that might get mad at me thinking that I'm giving some favoritism or something. So.
That's an important distinction. Distinction. Thank you. I'm tongue-tied. So we're going an hour earlier than normal this morning.
My fault.
Max has to be down on the House floor.
Let me show real quick. We got the morning crew getting after it here. I just switched to the morning Matt cam here. Show that this is a little earlier than usual.
Yep. Yeah. It was a little later for me last night, so we had a tactical training that we did, and I got home at about midnight 40 last night. Yeah. Didn't fall asleep till like 2, and then the internal clock went off this morning, as it always does, is at 4:15. Like I snap up, and I was like, oh, and then I was, oh wait, Max is coming in. That's right, we're doing it early. So glad to have you here. Tell us, because we want to dive into the role and responsibility. I don't think a lot of people, quite frankly, I mean, you president and Congress and governor and senators and all that. We want to get into what it is specifically that you do. What do you fight for in the community, especially local here, because a lot of people.
Let's build into that question, because I got a more important question before we get into the House Representative questions. Let's lean into the councilman question for a second, okay?
Yeah, all right.
Oh,
we got a lot of Crystal Valley listeners.
Oh, that's right. Sure.
I got an important topic for you.
All right. Shoot.
All right.
Shoot.
This past year, a few months ago, they messed up our community.
Yeah.
By way of reducing the speed limit on Crystal Valley Parkway.
Yeah.
By 10 miles per hour.
Right.
For no reason other than a councilman decided we should do this. No vote, nothing. Just did it. From 45 miles per hour to 35 miles per hour. Were you in favor of this, Max? I need to know what kind of man I'm dealing with on this podcast.
Here we go, man.
Heavy hitting punches right out of the gate.
An hour earlier than normal, and then here come the questions right out of the box. I love it. Come on, let's go. Yes, I did.
Oh no.
Oh man.
Max, do you live in Crystal Valley?
No, I don't.
That's why. You see, they don't even live in the community, and they want to make changes.
That's right.
The problem was never the legal, law-abiding, responsible drivers driving 45 miles per hour. Those were fine. It was the ones driving 55, 65 miles per hour.
That's right.
But 35 miles per hour, dropping it 10 miles per hour from the back of Crystal Valley to the front, driving this way, that adds at least about 5 minutes per day one way. So that's about 10 minutes per day. And I mean, that adds up, obviously,
I'll be
for
straight
those
up
who
with
gotta
that.
drive
I
that
thought
way.
I thought it was construction. I thought that's why I went to 35.
No, and
that's how
I
the
can
orange
give you-
flags.
I can give you a little bit of a backstory on it. I mean, first of all, even though I don't live down here, I've been on this road quite often, right? And generally speaking, people are going to go probably 5 over. 5 to 7 is generally outside of the speed limit. I think it's pretty well expected. I think the idea was that not necessarily coming from that Lake Gulch coming up this way, but going from this way down towards Lake Gulch. You come over that crest, and then you kind of start to hit towards, as you're going down towards, what was that, Rhyolite Park?
Yeah.
You kind of go into that area, and, excuse me, it gets a little hairy, it gets a little tight, kind of going in there at 5.7 or somebody doing 10 over. Then the idea is just to try to slow it down just a little bit. There will be a roundabout going in there, by the way, because there's some other homes that are going in just to the north. It was a piece of school property. I thought that's what you're going to ask me about, because that's kind of a controversial item down here as well. It was a piece of property owned by the school that the way that it works is that if the school wasn't going to develop it, then it needs to revert back to the developer. And it was written that way, so there's not much that the town can do about it. And so the developer is going to come back in and put some additional homes in there. And, of course, the community's not excited about that. And I wouldn't be either if I was living right in that area. So you kind of pick your poison, right? Because you can either be the council person that voted for this, and you think that hopefully that there'll be some compliance, right? Because at the end of the day, not to speak directly for Castle Rock PD, but you want compliance. You don't necessarily want to have to go out and be a police force and be writing people tickets all the time, because then that's the other side, right? Now we're talking about supporting government in a way where that enforcement becomes onerous. You've got police cars out there, they're gunning people all the time, and they're going to pull people over and give them tickets. I can't imagine that anybody would be happy with that either. So maybe instead of increasing enforcement and increasing that expansion of government and increasing that against the good citizens that are hardworking families, they don't need to be paying $200 out of their pockets for tickets. Maybe instead you just try to lower the speed limit and get compliance out of it, and just get a safer neighborhood in the process.
Was there any traffic study done before this?
There was not. I will tell you. You're asking all the questions.
Yes,
of an
I am.
upset,
You know why?
of an
Because
upset
I've lived in
resident.
Crystal Valley. I'm on my
Absolutely.
third house here, and
Absolutely.
obviously we've got our businesses set up here.
That's right.
This was a huge change that seemed like it was quite a little bit of an overreach, in my opinion. And I know that there's a whole bunch of Crystal Valleyans that are on board with what I'm saying right now.
That's right.
I've heard, though, that because of how much people have been affected by this, because 10 minutes per day is huge for working people that are trying to maximize the amount of time that they have at work and then back with their families. 10 minutes is a big deal. 45 miles per hour was good. And to your point, if there is a hazard, or if there's anything that needs to change with certain sections, you can reduce the speed limit there.
That's
if
right.
traffic studies support that it's actually a feasible idea. I've heard, and I've been told a couple other council members, people involved in Castle Rock, that there's going to be a traffic study done now, and then potentially revert back depending on what the traffic study
You bet.
reveals.
And that is ongoing. That was part of this, is that decrease it, but then watch and collect data and see if this is the right solution long term. At the end of the day, I'll tell you that I tend to default to the person, to the council person that represents that district. If that council person feels like that's particularly important for their district, it's a little hard for me, not living in that district, to say, I don't know that I necessarily agree. There are boundaries to that, obviously. I can't be going overboard, but to your point, it is going to be a data collection source, and could very well be temporary. However, since we got a lot of people who live in Crystal Valley on the horn here on the line, I'll just tell everybody, all right, step one, turn on your ignition. Step two, come on, man, it should not be light your hair on fire. We all know there are a lot of it, and I guarantee you there's somebody out there listening right now that's guilty. I mean, maybe I'm guilty, so I'm not pointing fingers, but I'm saying let's just not light our hair on fire when we drive. Let's just be respectful in neighborhoods because, I mean, come on, slow down and save lives.
We should all be able to agree with that.
Yeah, I want to. I want to go backwards and go forwards for a second. So when I moved here 26 years ago, Castle Rock was a bedroom community. It was. I would talk to people that lived in Parker, where I play hockey, or up in North Denver, and they're like, Castle Rock, man, I'm not driving all the way down there. And now it's just, it touches, right? Like everything is connected and we're building and it's growing like crazy. What's your perspective from, and you've been here for a long time, right? You've served in many roles. What's your perspective on the growth? Where do you see it going? And is it growing too much? I think is a fair question, because there's a lot of people that are going like, man, like when does this stop? It feels like we're losing the scenery, we're losing the beauty, the natural attributes that drew us all here now are just housing communities. Yeah. How do you feel about that?
So there's two different sides, right? There's I'm a homeowner, I'm a taxpayer, I'm a family man right here in Castle Rock. And when I moved out here, I can remember there are pieces of property I drive by and think, gosh, I hope the landowner never sells that, right? And
yep.
Sure enough, of course they have. And we've all seen it change. You've been here for any amount of time in Castle Rock, you've seen it change quite a bit. So, I mean, really, kind of from that perspective, to answer your question, is it growing too much? Yeah, sure, it's growing too much. But at the same time, I think that's really important. From the time that I moved here, I immediately got involved with the town, which is a little. I never had any interest. My first home I bought. First of all, I grew up in Lakewood. First home I bought in Arvada, and I never really felt. And no shade on Arvada. But I never felt this sense of connection to that place. I'm always thankful for the town. It's where I bought my first home and raised my kids, or first kind of part of their lives, and then moved down here to Castle Rock because I wanted just a little bit more open space, right? And as soon as I got out of the car, it's like I wanted to get involved with the town. I knew that I was home, and so I started learning more and more about the town just from my involvement. Being a volunteer on different boards and commissions. I was a volunteer on the Water Commission. Back then it was called the Utilities Commission, Planning Commission, Design Review Board. I got involved with the Metropolitan District. I got involved with the HOA. I could not get enough of being involved in my community and kind of being involved at that local level, right? So the more that I learned, I guess the more that I understand that it's been planned, right? This growth has been planned for really since the 1980s. So there are a couple of different phases that Castle Rock has gone through that are important to get us to where we're at today. And in the 1980s, so Castle Rock's always been the county seat for Douglas County. I mean, you have to go way back when it wasn't, but so for all intents and purposes, it's been the county seat for the past that we can recollect. That's something to keep in mind because they wanted to be able to attract people here in the 1980s, and when they did that, they entitled, which means legally zoned, a lot of the land, like 80 to 90% of the land in Castle Rock was entitled, legally zoned, back in the 1980s. What that means, from kind of an everyday person kind of perspective, is kind of think of it about the property that you own, the house that you own. Everybody, the home that you own, that's your property. Those you have property rights. The town has no ability, nor do they have any business, but they have no legal ability, even if they thought they had the business to do so, to come in and then say, you know what, we're going to take the back half section of your yard and we're going to change the zoning and we're going to make that agricultural, or we're going to make that multifamily. And funny enough, this can all tie right back into what's going on in the Gold Dome. They can't do that. You can't change the property rights on you. You imagine you'd throw a fit, and rightfully so. Same thing. When Castle Rock Town Councils back in the 1980s decided that they were going to go ahead and say, you know what, okay, this is zoned for multifamily development or this is zoned for single family development, those decisions were made. Those are irreversible. You can't go back and then just say, oh, we changed our mind on that. So what we're seeing now is just simply the development of those parcels that were legally entitled, 40 years ago, that now it's just that the conditions are ripe and the conditions are right for developers to be able to come in and do it. So the plan for Castle Rock has always been, and they don't tell you this when you first decide to start looking at houses here, but the plan has always been that the population of the town would be about 130 to 150,000 people. We're sitting,
Really?
yeah, we're sitting about 90 right now. Now here's the good news, if there's good news in all of this, is that typically when developments are coming online, they're coming online at densities that are lesser than what they are zoned for. So I personally think that number is going to be somewhere around $120, $130. We'll land somewhere in there. It's still going to take probably the next 30 years to get there, 20, 30 years. And development, funny enough, has really slowed down, The town's down about 60% on development over the past couple of years. But just expect that if we're at 90 now and we might get to about 120, 125, we're still going to see some more growth come in.
And that allocates for water and everything.
Yeah, and the water is a really important
It's
piece
a
of it.
sticking point for
Oh,
sure.
it's a sticking point. And so there are different, look, nobody really wants to see the development. You want to be able to look out, you want to see the Rocky Mountains. You moved here, for the open space. You moved here for the community. You moved here for the safety, public safety, specifically. Yeah, and so you don't really like to see those houses going up. So I know nobody's crazy about it, but typically when somebody decides that they want to, go on social media and start yapping about something that's happening that's legally entitled, again, I mean, those are property rights, and property rights is a two-way street. If you enjoy your own property rights at your home, you have to respect the property rights of others that have had this land for a long time. You always see that somebody will say, oh, we don't have enough water, or what's going to happen to the wildlife, or we don't have the infrastructure. There's actually a very good water plan. When I first moved to Castle Rock, all of the water was coming out of alluvial wells, snow melt from hundreds of years ago. Now, it tasted great, but that's a non-renewable water source, non-renewable. So the town of Castle Rock identified a long time ago that they need to get to renewable water. They've got a plan, and I'm telling you that from the time I moved here at 0% renewable water, I think we're sitting at something like 40% today or whatever it is. And we're trying to get to about 75%. And, we have major investments in some water projects. We bought space in Ruderhest Reservoir. We've got Box Elder. Yeah, the water department for Castle Rock is phenomenal. There is a plan, and I'm telling you that if you want to learn about the plan, you can go onto the town's website and you can sorry for the pun. You can drown yourself in all of the information that's there, because there's a lot of info there to be able to get caught up on. And I encourage people to do that, because the more you understand about it, the more the better off you are. And just a little piece about the infrastructure. Absolutely. You're right. We don't have the infrastructure, but development pays for the infrastructure. We got option A, that the development pays for the infrastructure when they come in and the infrastructure develops with the development, or option B, if you want to be taxed up one side and down the other to pay for that infrastructure before the development comes in, we can do that. But that's not the Castle Rock way. So development pays for the infrastructure, and the infrastructure improvements come as the development comes in as well.
Well, that's going to be a whole part B we'll get into. I'm going to volley this back over to Jared for a second, but I do have a question moving forward on that.
Yeah.
Oh, you're going to volley this over to me. Okay. I guess we need to get into more heavy-hitting questions. I mean, we can talk about Castle Rock. I'm happy to talk about Castle Rock all day. I love Castle Rock. I've been here since I was 7 years old.
Nice.
And not really have, as you can see, we're kind of set up here, so I don't really have much of an intention of going anywhere else. I loved Castle Rock. I love the community. But I think we kind of maybe have to just get over some of my more petty gripes here on speed limits and dig into some deeper topics.
You're coming on in an interesting time. So here, speed limit drops. We had the sheriff on. I told a story on the podcast, and it's a funny story, and it's sadly, and it actually pisses you off when you stop and think about it. The super short version is we had tons of speeders going through our neighborhood, And all the cops came out and did the very thing that you're talking about, right? So they run it, it's the tax dollar spent, it's the time waste, all this stuff. They write 27 tickets. I end up in Muni court on a dog barking thing, which my dog was doing. And I watched 27 people get pled to a non-moving defective vehicle violation while the judge came at me because he had a dog next door that ticked him off back in the day. So it became this deal where it was, bam, I became the target. And we watched everybody that was just speeding walk out the door. So I sympathize with my good friend Jared because I drive down this road and I go, man, this is stupid slow. When is this construction going to end? I just found out this morning that's the actual speed limit. I thought it was a construction project because I saw orange flags going everywhere. But that, rather than 2.0ing that, here in the town, the whole reason I asked the question is because I was trying to set the next step up is what the world is feels like it's on fire. It's not, right? I mean, there's a lot of amazing things happening in this country right now, but there's a ton of focus on Minnesota, Minneapolis, all that's going on there, federal immigration, and just on and on and on and on and on and on and on. So if you were sitting in the world of doom and gloom, it looks dark every time you turn on the news. But the reality is there's a lot of amazing things that are happening out there. From a House district level, I don't think a lot of people understand your role and just how pivotal it is. And the responsibility therein. And you said something important just a second ago. You said if people wanted to drown themselves in and dig into this, I think we have a bit of an education problem in this country. Victor Mark sat right there in that chair and said the exact same thing. We just have people that they're not critically thinking. They're not going out. They want to have it done for them, but they don't like the result once it's done. So what is your specific role? How does it affect the state? How does it affect the great big picture? Really the U.S. and everything that's going on, but through your eyes, in kind of a Reader's Digest version.
Sure. Yeah. No. Great question. And for town council, I want to stress this because a lot of people will not vote for council. You don't have a D or an R or a U or whatever different alphabet soup they got out there these days for political parties. They don't have that designation on the ballot. Make sure that you're voting for town council because I'm telling you, that is the most direct, most influential form of government, the closest form of government to you, the one that might end up dropping speed limits on you.
Oh, no.
Or just the ones that are going to make those local decisions that are going to impact you and your family. In November, and I know it's a long time, so maybe we should talk about this when it gets a little bit closer, but as those ballots start to come out in November, it's a midterm election. You don't have the heavyweight bout on there. You don't have the presidential, but we do have the governor and we're going to be voting for. We got Congress we're going to be voting for. Take your ballot if it's more than one page, whatever it is. Go to the bottom of your ballot. Start there. Because that is where you're going to find your town council person. Make sure you're voting for town council because that's very, very important. And then I'm going to tell you that next up from that is going to be your House and your Senate district. That's your next most, the really closest form of government to you because we're making decisions. So Colorado legislature is composed of 65 members of the House and 35 members of the Senate. Now I can get into the political breakdown, and I probably will here in a second. But let's just stay bipartisan or nonpartisan, right? You got 100 legislators. You got 100 people that through House districts or Senate districts are supposed to be working for their municipal governments. Every House district comprises about 80,000 voters. So I got about 80,000 constituents. I got about 80,000 bosses is the way I look at it. My job is simply, I'm going to tell you that you probably will get a different answer if you ask 100 different people. If you ask 100 legislators, what's the job? You'll probably get 100 answers, unfortunately, because I think the answer is pretty simple. My job is to reflect the voices of those 80,000 people because it's my job to do it because they can't go up there and do it themselves. Either they don't have the time, they don't have the interest, they don't have the knowledge to do it. But at the end of the day, they're being impacted by the decisions that are being made up there. And it's my job to make sure that I'm reflecting their desires and their wishes as I was selected to do. And I'm honored to do that job. So we vote on a lot of things that impact state level, but very local level. And I can go on and on and on about the different, the different ideas about what state government's supposed to be. And unfortunately, there are a lot of folks up there that think the state government is where we ought to be making all the decisions. And coming from town council, I think, well, no, wait a second, like the person in your council district that you're not particularly happy with for changing the speed limit, that's the person that you need to be going to, right? That's the person that has directly impacted your life. It's local government that we really ought to be supporting at the state level. A lot of times we cut those folks, out of the conversation. We say, "Oh no, we got all the answers at the Gold Dome." And I'm telling you, we do not. And the answers they come up with, honestly, they directly and adversely impact us very often here.
So you have a vote. You have 80,000 constituents. I'm assuming that's wash, rinse, repeat for everybody else.
That's right.
How much impact do you think? Because it feels to me when I talk to folks, they're just like, I mean, if they were actively involved before, some of them feel like they're pulling back. If you looked at the last Douglas County election, just the last election, look at the voter turnout. And people are sitting back, how did we end up with the school board? Well, I can tell you it wasn't their policy. It was the amount of people that came out or didn't come out.
That's right.
What do we do about that? How do we change that right now? Because that feels like if there is a kind of an undercurrent tone, and I'm speaking from a conservative side of things, it feels like there's a lot of infighting as to what's the next step. And when I look over at the liberal progressive left, they're just going to fight for whatever their cause is, but they're doing it. They're coming together to do it. It's all emotion based, and over here it's more rational. The problem is you have several very opinionated people, in my opinionated opinion, for better use of the words, where I sit back and I watch this stuff and I'm like, why are we not uniting? They're uniting and it doesn't even make sense, and it's all out of emotion. What is the struggle right now from your perspective? You're sitting on that floor every day. You see this every day. You represent 80,000 people. How do those people have a voice through you? I mean, I get the direct correlation, but the voting aspect of it, because I just feel like we're getting our butts kicked every time we turn around.
Yeah, well, we are. We're going to. And when we talk about as Republicans, yeah, we are. I think people are tired, honestly. I think they're tired of listening to the political rhetoric. I think they're tired of feeling like maybe their vote doesn't matter. But I'm telling you, it does matter. It makes a big difference. And I'm pretty easy to get in touch with. Legislators should be pretty easy to get in touch with. Now I understand that as you start to move up into the levels of Congress, right, that's a little bit more removed, and there's it's a little bit more difficult to think that everything that's happening in Washington, that you can have a direct impact, that you can have a voice in. And I understand that. I understand that as a voter myself, right? I don't necessarily feel like I can make a direct impact on what Congress is doing in Washington. And then just keep in mind, you got legislature, right? This is an important distinction. It's kind of backtrack a little bit. You got legislature state level. Then you got Congress, and Congress is D.C. Just the other day, I was leaving the state capitol, and I heard a gentleman come up to the information desk as I was walking by to go to my car. And he said, "Oh, excuse me, sir, can you tell me what time Congress is in session?" And I was kind of interested to know if he was going to correct him and say, "Well, here, sir, it's not Congress. Congress is D.C." But I don't know how he answered the question. But you're right. I mean, there's that disconnect, right? A lot of folks don't know exactly how everything works, and if you don't know how everything works, then it's a little hard to understand how much of of an impact that your voice can have. But truly it does. So a couple of things. First of all, always encourage attendance at town council. Right, go in and testify. It's a public agenda, and you go in and your voice. You're on a timer, but your voice can be heard, and it makes a difference. I'm telling you, it makes a difference. That to me is my favorite part of town council or legislature. You can do the same thing. As a matter of fact, just today, there is going to be a very controversial bill heard in State Civic Military Affairs in Senate. It's Senate Bill 004. I think we decided it was 004. I'm still trying to get my head around the numbers because it's early in session. Just started here, about a little less than 2 weeks ago. Been 100 bills introduced. But 004 is the expansion of the red flag law. That's an important one, right? So if you want to go up to testify, you can go up to testify. You go up to the Capitol and you sign up and you go in there and you get to look the people that are making the decision about whether or not this bill gets out of committee directly in the eye, and you can talk to them. Now, I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. All right. When you go to town council, you're going to find a receptive audience with your council people. Maybe they don't agree with what you're saying, but they're going to look at you and they're going to be engaged in the conversation. You got to be prepared that that's not necessarily always the case up at the state capitol. I was just over the weekend, I was at Red Rocks Community College for something called a Metro Mayor's Retreat, right? So it's all the mayors through the Front Range. They get together, they've got a retreat. It was pretty impressive. It was a huge group of folks there, right? If you think of all the different municipalities and all the mayors and folks that were there. They had some of the legislators that had served previously, or in my case, obviously still continue to serve in local government. They wanted us to come up there and just hear them out. There was one mayor that started to go off and say, you know what? She said she has never been so disrespected and felt so just like cast aside as when she went up to testify at the state capitol. She said people were on their phones, people were walking out of the room, they weren't paying attention. And here's the most interesting thing. Allow me to get just a little partisan. I'm not saying Republicans don't do it. She said, you know what, I'm a Democrat mayor. Yeah, I'm telling you that the Democrats were the worst about it. She goes, I felt that the Republicans were much more respectful about paying attention to what I had to say. And the room erupted. Everybody started clapping. And I thought, okay, this isn't a one person issue. This is something that echoes throughout the entire room. So I think that doesn't, we're not helping ourselves, right? If we're trying to tell people that you can get involved and your voice matters, and they come up there and they spend 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, good knows how long, out of their day to testify, and then somebody gets up and walks out, or they're too busy and they're on their phone. That's really, really unfortunate. And I apologize to all of Colorado for that, because we ought to be better as legislators, because really when it comes to the public input, that's what we're supposed to make some of the most important decisions on.
Could you walk us through best as you can that red flag law as you just now laid it out? Just give us the abbreviated version of
Sure.
what that is and why it's significant.
Sure. Well, first of all, you got the what's it called? The extreme order protection. And actually, I took a little photo of it this morning just to make sure that the actual description, because there's the actual description and then there's kind of like my interpretation of the description. So I want to be kind of fair for what it is. Senate Bill 26. Let me back up just for a second. When you're reading these bills, it's either going to be HB or SB.
House bill, Senate bill.
Right? Yep. So it either means it was originated by a member of House of Representatives, as HB, or Senate, right? And then the year will follow. So you've got this is SB 26, because we're obviously 2026, 004. Expands who may petition for an extreme risk protection order, which is just, the acronym is ERPO, adding healthcare facilities, behavioral health treatment facilities, K through 12 schools, and higher education institutions as institutional petitioners. So basically what it means is that if you're in that role, right, as a K through 12, counselor, a health treatment, administrator, and you feel like your client is now, maybe in danger of harming themselves or somebody else, that they have a firearm, it becomes, what they're trying to make it is a mandatory reporting. So now it's your job to report that person, so that way the sheriff can come in and then confiscate firearms. So it's an expansion of an erosion of constitutional God-given rights of the Second Amendment, right? So let's be real clear on that the state is continuing to do that and continues to try to erode God-given rights. Now, you said earlier that you had the sheriff in here, Douglas County Sheriff Darren Weekly, good man. I can tell you that last time I sat down and had this conversation with him, wasn't that too long ago. He said, he goes, you know how many red flag confiscations we've done, under his watch since he's been sheriff?
None.
0.
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing. Right. So I guess the bright side is this: if you live in a good, God-fearing, constitutionally aware county, these laws that they're passing up there aren't necessarily going to directly impact you. It doesn't mean that they should be passed, but at the same time, this is something that I would encourage people to go out and testify against. Now, just so you understand what the process is, if it passes committee, right? If the senators that are hearing this committee, if they vote to pass it out of committee, then it will go to the Senate floor for what's called second reading. They will debate it on the Senate floor, second reading. Perhaps it's amended. Perhaps the bill's amended in committee. Perhaps the bill's amended on the floor. Perhaps it dies on the floor on second reading. If not, then it'll go back for another round that now comes through the House. Right now, it'll go to a House committee, go to a second reading, back over, see if it's amended, and then third reading for final passage. So there are a lot of opportunities for either a bill to be shut down or for a bill to be amended in that process. Funny thing with some of these red flag or let's just say 2A laws to begin with anyway, you don't really want to amend them, right? Which seems counterintuitive. But think about this, that if you've got an infringement of constitutional rights, if you got something that, again, tramples upon God-given 2A freedoms, you don't want to try to make that bill better. You don't want to try to just notch it down, because at the core of it, you will never make it okay. You will never make it permissible to have scraped more of our constitutional rights away from your constituents or from ourselves, right? So it's never going to be okay. So let that thing go forward in its full stinky glory, and then that way we've got an opportunity to shut it down in court, because we're not trying to make it better. We're trying to actually, if anything, make it obvious of what it is, so then that way when the lawsuits come, and the lawsuits will come, we've got great organizations, Rocky Mountain Gun Owners, National Association of Gun Rights, Colorado State Shooting Association, they'll sue them. Right. And we want that lawsuit to be victorious and have the whole thing shut down. We don't want a judge to look at it and be like, well, it's really not that bad.
There's so many red flags with that red flag law.
Oh boy.
So many red flags. I mean, on surface level, they always do this. They have a way of writing it to where it can appeal to people that just don't think about it for very long, don't really actually give it an honest intellectual thought, because think, oh, somebody threatens themselves or others, yeah, take their guns away. No, think about all the people that are out there that need somebody to counsel them through mental health crises. Think about the people out there with potential harm coming to them or their family. Think about a father out there that's lost his daughter, somebody murdered her. Mm-hmm. And he's going to feel like he can't sit down and counsel somebody and tell the very real emotions that he's having, be able to just be honest, be like, yeah, I want to kill that guy.
Right.
Everything in me wants justice, and I want to kill that guy that killed that harmed my family. Those people need to be able to get the treatment they need, be able to get this off their chest, and they need to know that their First Amendment rights are not going to be violated, but they also need to know that their Second Amendment rights are going to be protected. Yeah. So much across the board with that red flag law that's just infuriating.
It is, and it's open to interpretation. And I think Jared makes a really powerful point that I've testified on the floor, by the way, twice. And I have a story within a story on that at another time. But Jared's point is important because you have somebody who's lost their kid. Somebody's murdered their kid, right? Imagine that emotion, right? That somebody's taken from you. You weren't able to protect them. Now they're gone forever. And you're going to have these feelings and emotions. And you want to go into a counselor and sit down and say, look, man, everything in me wants to kill this guy. And I know I can't. And I know I'm not going to break the law. But I need to be able to express this. But you got somebody sitting on the other side that interprets that. And at the level of intelligence that we have floating around out here right now, I would be terrified thinking, because all it takes is that one person to make that moment happen, right? Now you're in a tinderbox. Well, he said, and then it's open to interpretation because of that counselor. And imagine you got a guidance counselor in the school who's got about 5 minutes of experience, and they're interpreting something that a kid says that's it's not an actionable step. It's just an emotion. Mm-hmm. Dude, I've seen school lockdowns over things like this. That's right. On the law enforcement side, I have been part of these things repeatedly, where we get called into somebody's home and you're walking in. Well, such and such said this, and I'll get the kid off to the side. The kid will be like, "It's not what I said at all. This person's just, and you dig into it and you find out this counselor has got a history of overreacting. but the law is not written in a way to protect that. So now all of a sudden we're coming in heavy. And, I'm glad you brought up Darren Weekly because he sat right here on the show and said the same thing. Jared and I asked him, how many have you done? None.
No.
Look, are there reasons for certain laws? Yeah, there are. But some of them are pretty dumb.
Yeah.
And this one is an overreach beyond an overreach at this point.
Yeah, and examples brought up of losing a child, right? That you understand the emotional trauma that's going to cause. Now, keep in mind, that the person writing these laws is somebody who lost a child, right? And so, there's this emotional damage, natural emotional damage that's been inflicted. But you're going to say that you're going to take that emotional damage, you're going to take that and not make your counseling the creation of state laws.
Yeah.
It's
a degree of transference is what it is. So we're talking two different things. You're talking about somebody who's probably in the Senate or the House or whatever it may be, who's lost somebody. So their sole focus is I want to go protect the entire world through my view. I'm talking about somebody who's a victim on the other side who doesn't run for political office. They wanted their kid protected, but they also want to have a voice and they want to have their constitutional rights. So both can have loss. One is approaching it from, I'm going to restrict all of your rights. And the other one is like, I want my rights. And that is a heavy teeter-totter to be sitting on right now.
Well, and then also, really, counseling is only effective if you can be completely open and honest. And this is basically undermining that entire process because people are going to say, I can't, there's things I can't say.
Yeah.
There are things I can't say. Then you know what? You've now, through this bill, you've now basically neutered the entire counseling world here in Colorado because people aren't going to be able to tell the truth. They're going to be afraid of what's going to happen.
My wife said it yesterday as she's a therapist, psychologist, and has been 31 years private practice. She says the amount of restrictions that she has faced through DORA, what's come out of the state, mandatory vaccine or you lose your licensure. I mean, on and on and on and on and on. They overreach. So it's not just into the 1A world and the 2A world. I mean, there's other elements in this, even Fourth Amendment. So I love talking about this stuff because I find it fascinating. At the same time, I find it infuriating because it can be a double-edged sword, right? Yeah. And I'm very appreciative of guys like you that are willing to go take that fight on the Hill for us. So here's my Super Reader's Digest version. You said it. You look up and you see these people playing on their phones and you're testifying. And so I went in, I got my 3 minutes, I had my topic, and this was on school safety and it was on communications. So I'm partnered up with a company called LifeSpot. It should be in every school in America, every government building in America. It's a swipe, hold 3 seconds, active shooter deal, alerts everybody. All the emergency responders are coming. It tells you where the shooter is. I mean, it takes tactics to a whole new level, right? A few years ago, went down to the State House floor to talk about communications and communication needs within. I mean, basically, this app is redefining the 911 system, and it's epically cool. Yeah. So I go down to testify. 5 of the 7 people were up there, were on their phone, and they're just, and a couple of them were laughing and doing stuff. So I just stood there, and I sat in silence. And after about 45 to 50 seconds, they kind of looked up, and they're like, "Well, you have your time to go." I said, "Well, I'm going to stand here and wait for you to put your phones down, and I'm going to take an additional 3 minutes." And that immediately ticked them off. They said, "Well, first of all, you can't," And I said, "Well, I sat here for 3 hours to wait to speak for 3 minutes. Get off your phone."
Yeah.
And I was forward about it. I wasn't kind about it. I wasn't nice about it. I said, I don't care how you vote. I don't care what's behind your letters. What I care about is the kids.
Yeah.
So people need to know there's good sides and there's bad sides, right? Mm-hmm. And you brought it up, and I'm glad you did. We as I think as citizens right now, one of the things that I know a lot of people are fired up over is they feel like their voice is not heard. And there's a lot, and I think that in all fairness, right wing, left wing, it's all the same bird to me. Mm-hmm. But there's a few good feathers in that bird. Our buddy Eli, my friend, came on here, sat right there in that chair. We didn't talk politics at all. We talked faith, talked family, talked servanthood. We talked about taking care of your brothers, blah, blah, blah. He touched a little bit on DC and the swamp, and he's like, it's just a mess. But he's a good feather. Mm-hmm. He's one of the good feathers. You're one of the good feathers. I know this. But at the end of the day, people are not trusting right now, especially when you're watching things unfold on social media in real time. The Nick Shirleys of the world going out and uncovering things. I said on our last podcast to Jared, I said, mainstream media is done, man. They're gone. Yep. And the next year, they're going to drop so low in the percentage points of relevancy because everybody's got a camera and everybody's talking and everybody's showcasing stuff right now. And I think the next gen of things you're going to see are going to be investigatory type deals on every topic. It might even go to the point of nauseum, but I think you're going to see it. I think you're going to see an awakening in this country because people are like, wait a second, I don't understand what is happening. I just feel like I'm getting stripped from and robbed from. Why is it in Elbert County they don't have those mandatory things you got to hook up to your exhaust to see if you're emission friendly, but in Douglas County we do.
Yeah.
And we touch it's stuff. It's just, I could give example after example. You as the House rep for here local, I'm going to go back to the question on the state level. How do you impact the state level? How do you personally go, here's what my 80,000 are saying. I'm mad or I'm whatever.
Yeah.
How do you go in and get that done?
Yeah. Yeah. I'll be honest with you. It's really hard for anybody that's a Republican, in my party to be able to get something done. The numbers, I gave you the numbers, are 100 legislators, there's 65 in the House, there's 35 in the Senate. Let's just look at the House. 65 in the House, and this is why your voice matters so much. 65 in the House, of that, there are only 22 that are Republicans. 35 in the Senate, there are only 12 that are Republicans.
So basically a third.
So 34 out of 100, right? Now, that means that we are one seat away in both the House and in the Senate from being in what's called a super minority status. One seat. This is where your vote matters so much because I'm going to tell you, I've said it 100 times, and I mean it. Government's not supposed to work like this, and I would be as perturbed, and I would say the same thing if it were, 43 Republicans and 22 Democrats. I would be perfectly honest with you. I'd be a little happier. I'd be a little bit more excited to get to the Capitol this morning. But it's still, that is not representative of the people. That is not a functional government. When you have a system where policy can be passed through simply because you have the ability to do it, that's not good for Colorado. And it wouldn't be good if it's 43 and 22, one way or the other. But that's what we're dealing with right now. We have got to be able to try to balance it, because if we can go in there and if we're just a couple seats, 5 seats, I don't mind being in the minority. But goodness gracious, give us a chance to be able to knock down some of this really atrocious policy in committee. And right now we can't do it because a lot of these committees, it's like, 8-3. It's the committee stack. You're not going to get anything through 9-4. And they stack it that way. There's a lot of power that the majority party has when they form committees. You go in there, you're not sitting in front of a bipartisan committee. It's very heavily weighted to the majority party. So that's why the majority party bills get through and the Republican bills do not. Now, there's a lot of stuff. I'll tell you right now, I'm working on a bill that isn't left or right. All right. It is a bill to support the intellectually and developmentally disabled community. I have had to date one bill signed into law, and it was for the intellectually and developmentally disabled community. We've got a community here in Castle Rock called Wellspring. They've got their independent housing, situation up there, Unity on Park Street. Very, very close to my heart with that. I know as a Republican, a lot of people think that I don't have any of my feelings left anymore. I still got a feeler in here, 1 or 2 of them left. And that's a community that I really try to support as much as possible. I'm running that, and I don't know if it'll get through or not, because it's kind of getting after a State Department that the Democrats tend to want to support just kind of blindly. So we'll see if it gets through or not. But I'm running another bill that is very partisan. It's what's called a messaging bill. Messaging bill is I'm sending a message because I know the thing's dead before the ink dries on it, and that's House Bill 261021. If you want to look it up, 1021. I'm running that with Representative Brandy Bradley, and that basically repeals every single bit of 2A infringement that the Gold Dome has passed over the last decade. It's not going after one thing. It's not going after just 003. It's taking everything down. It's repealing everything. Because you said it earlier about the regulation that is driving your wife nuts. Here's a stat for you. Colorado is the 6th most regulated state in the country. 6th most regulated state, and 45% of our regulations are duplicative, meaning they're unnecessary. but we love us some regulations up in that Gold Dome, and we are just strangling the life out of small business. And when it comes down to it, I know that for some people, guns are bad, right? But a lot of these gun shops, a lot of the FFLs, these are family businesses. These are small businesses. These support Colorado. And we're strangling the life out of everything because we can't get out of our own regulatory way. So that's a lot of what I'm fighting for up there. And then that's how we can impact Colorado, right? We can try to make sure that we're fighting back, because there are some Democrats that don't like the regulation either, that we can join forces and we can maybe try to help amend some of these things or knock down some of these bills that are putting the regulatory pressure on businesses and family businesses. Affordability. There are some things that we can still do, and there will be some good things that come out of the legislative session this year, which runs middle of January through middle of May, 120 days. There'll be some good things that happen. It's just there'll be a lot of things that are bad that I think hurt Colorado that we just simply cannot stop, and that's because of the math. And I urge people to get up and vote and make sure that we're trying to balance that out as best as possible.
Amen.
So, and you said this too. You used the word anger earlier. Now I want to kind of touch on that a little bit because, that's something I think we all need to try to keep in check. There's a lot. If you're on social media, if you're watching mainstream media right now, I'm just going to urge everybody to try to just reconnect as best as possible with your faith. Reconnect, right? Because there'll be, and there are some bills that when we start fighting them in the well, there's emotion that gets involved. I'm going to do my best to be better this year. I'm not overly emotional person anyway, but I'm going to make sure that when I step into that well, that I'm carrying forth my message. And if I'm going to argue against a bill, I don't want to do it out of anger. I want to do it understanding, be faith forward. So I'm doing it out of love. And I'm doing it out of trust. I want to walk in love and I want to walk in trust, or I want to walk in truth. Sorry, because you can't have love without truth, right? And you've got to be able to tell people that maybe what they're doing is a lie. Because if I am going to just sit back and say, oh, I'm going to accept that, and I'm just going to pander to this because I don't want to ruffle any feathers, that's not love. That's lying to somebody. So you've got to be truthful. And if you go up to that, if I go up to that well, or if we argue anything, even over a beer with our neighbor at the bar, right? We're gonna argue anything. You've got to do it in truth, and you got to do it in love. Those are pieces that I'm going to make sure I take into the well, because if we start to react out of anger, we've lost. Right? You and I go to the same church, Grace Church here. And that's my time to make sure that I've got my boat squarely connected to the dock, right? Because the devil wants us to drift. The devil wants us to float away. The devil wants to disconnect us from our moorings, and we can't allow that to happen. And we know as soon as you step in the car in the morning, whether it's people going crazy on the roads, or somebody cuts you off in traffic, or you got a coworker. All those are just attempts to disconnect us from our moorings, and we've got to just make sure that we recognize that and walk forward in truth and in love. Can't lie to people. Got to tell them the truth, but you got to do it in love. And there's a message that was delivered at Grace Chapel just very recently that I love, and that our job is to be the messenger. Just everybody's job is to be the messenger. You carry forward the message. You have no control over how that message is received, right? And I have to understand that when I'm arguing against a bill. Am I going to be effective? I don't know, maybe, but I just want to deliver the message. Look at it this way, and the example was kind of given this way, which really stuck in my head. Think of us as mailmen. If your job is simply to drive up, to put the mail, there's going to be junk mail in there, there's going to be bills, there's going to be maybe a birthday card with $20 in it. Your job is to just put it in the mailbox, and then you're done. Because you've got another mailbox that you've got to go to, and you got to deliver that mail. That's your job as the mailman. That's our job. Now, if the resident wants to come out and open up their mailbox, throw a bunch of lighter fluid in there and torch the whole thing, that's up to them, And you look back, you see that happening in your rearview mirror as you're delivering somebody else's mail. And you think, okay, well, you know what? They're not ready for that message right now. They didn't want that piece of mail. That's okay. It's not your job, not your chili, right? Your chili is simply just to deliver the message, and then that's what I aim to do during this legislative session.
It's a great analogy, actually.
Yeah,
Not
well
mine.
said.
Not mine. I'm stealing that directly from Pastor Brian Fields. I'm just repeating it because, again, that was my mooring. That was my chance to be able to kind of reconnect, make sure my dock is and my boat's securely connected to that dock. Those are things that I need to hang on to, and you got good men of faith like that to be able to bring you back. It's important to do.
It is.
Amen. Well said. I don't really think I have anything else. I think everything's been about covered. We do have another guest coming on next episode, Teddy Collins.
Oh, yeah.
And he's running for
Senate.
Senate.
Yep.
That's right.
Yep.
He's running for Senate. He is one of those family business 2A guys, as you just now mentioned a minute ago. He's got a gun shop in the Springs, and he's got a lot of things going on. But we'll be excited to kind of continue the 2A discussion further in depth with him on our next episode. But Max, it's been awesome talking to you today.
been great,
Thanks
man.
for answering questions, and thanks for sharing your heart there at the end, sir. I'll kind of turn it to Micah before we close. You know how we close every episode?
No, sir.
We close every episode with prayer.
No, I would imagine, So yeah, that's great.
And so you're welcome to be the one to say that prayer if you'd like to, sir. But anything in conclusion from you, Micah?
I do want one question.
Yes.
Polis, as a governor, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being amazing, 0 being worst governor in the history of history, what number would you give him right now?
Man, that's a really good question. Because if I'm just going to snap off and say, a partisan answer, I'm going to be below 5, obviously, right? I'm going to tell you, I'm going to give you a little bit of a surprising answer.
Okay.
I think he's probably, 5, 6.
Okay.
Okay. What we have to be aware of is, and this happens in Washington, right, is that there's, if you got an administration that people for whatever reason don't like, the pendulum usually goes the other way politically. Right? And we saw that when we had Biden in office, and we were able to get a lot of Republicans in some seats. If there's unrest with Washington right now, you kind of expect the pendulum to go back the other way. This is what frightens me about Polis, is that everybody, Republicans over the last 8 years are like, gosh, we got to get that guy out of here. I just heard a senator say yesterday she could not wait, Democrat senator, could not wait for this governor to get out. Couldn't wait. Why is that? You know why? Because he actually vetoes a lot of their bills. This governor is anything but moderate, right? Or anything but like, you can't say that he's necessarily like in favor of like Republican policies. But what's crazy is that he is not passing these bills that the real woke Democrat socialists, the real Progressive Party, are pushing forward. He vetoes a lot of them. The Democrats hate that. They can't wait to get rid of him. So what does that tell you? That they know behind him, whether it's Weiser or Bennett, their choices that they have back there. I really worry that we might end up with a governor that doesn't veto, and I worry that we might be sitting here in a couple of years thinking, even less than a year at this point, right? We might be thinking, gosh, I sure do wish that we could go back to the Jared Polis days.
You might be the only person in Colorado saying that. That is a powerful statement. So if I'm hearing you correctly, because it's an interesting perspective, you're essentially saying because he vetoes, there's certain things aren't getting passed, even though we know there's some extreme stuff that has, right? There's the 1312, that's a train wreck, other things that have been passed. But you're saying because he does this, that the next one coming in is potentially even more extreme.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's terrifying.
Oh, it is terrifying. That's what we have to worry about. Now, look, we have some fantastic candidates for governor, Republican candidates for governor, and I wish them all the best. Keep in mind that we have not historically done a very good job of electing Republican governors in this state. Bill Owens, you take the 8 years that we had with Bill Owens, I'll challenge you off the top of your head. Can you remember prior to Bill Owens, the last Republican governor we had? The last year of the last Republican governor we had outside of Bill Owens is Vanderhoof.
Yeah, it was.
1975.
75, yeah, 75, 76, yep.
75. I mean,
Yep.
think about that, right? Right. And think about how far the political climate has changed in Colorado since 75. Now, to be fair, Lamb and Romer, we had some that were real centrist, but they were Democrat. They were centrist Democrats. They weren't as far left as where Polis is right now. But yeah, there's a number of bills that Governor Polis has vetoed that I don't know that if Weiser or Bennett were to get through, I don't believe that they veto those bills.
Interesting.
Yeah, and our state could shift even more to the left of where we're at now. I know it's hard to believe.
Have you thought very much about
moving to Texas?
I think that's what's on a lot of people's minds. Have you thought very much about the gubernatorial candidates that are on the right side, and if you have put a stamp of endorsement or approval on anybody running in the primaries right now?
Yeah, I typically do not put endorsements as a candidate, but I'll tell you that I really, really like Scott Bottoms. First of all, let's be real clear. Scott Bottoms is a current representative. I work with him. I see him every single day. I have an opportunity to be able to see him in action. He's a pastor. He's a man of God. He's a great conservative, very, very principled conservative guy. So I have an opportunity to be with him all the time. Now I don't have that opportunity to spend that much time with any of the other candidates for governor.
Sure.
I understand that there's a lot of momentum and a lot of interest. And I understand it, behind Victor Marks. It's just that my guy right now is going to be Scott Bottoms because that's the man that I'm in the trench with. That's the guy that I've seen him under fire, and I've seen how he works, and I have seen him speak. And I tell you that man's heart is full of God, and it's full of good, strong constitutional values. And I think the state could really use a man like him.
I'm glad you gave that perspective because being in the trenches matters. We're seeing it right now, and I'll close out because I didn't want to rabbit trail further. You answered the question on Polis. You get good perspective. I appreciate that because not everybody's down there. They don't see it. We see the end results, right? It's kind of like the speed limit here. I bet if there was a traffic study that was done ahead of time, 95% of the people in here would have been like, nope, but we did something. And now we got to go back. We got to look at it. You get to see it from the floor level. I will say this. It was an interesting take on what you just said about Scott because I heard somebody say that the other day. And they said that he's not only a good man, but he's a fighter. I'm a Victor Marks guy for the same reason, because my perspective is I've never worked with Scott Bottoms. I've seen a couple things that he's done, but I've followed and been a part of the world that Victor has been in, and I've seen the accomplishments that he's made. So my support goes to Victor for a couple different reasons, but one, he's obviously huge on kids, on protecting them, but. I love the fact that you were truthful about that because a lot of people wouldn't come out and say straight up, here's why, and you did. And so I'm very, very grateful for that. And I retort the same way. My choice is because of perspective. And it's a lot of times, and this is, I think, important for me to close with, it's very easy to look at something very polarized and then jump on that. It's very easy to make a decision when you only have one half the information, in other words. So thank you for answering that honestly, because that's a big deal. And I think it's important that people know that we have good people that are out here. To me, that was more of a statement of hope than it even is endorsement, but it's still collectively, how do we come together? And that to me is always going to be the bigger question right now. So regardless of who you support or who I support, how do we get the person in office that needs to be out there that they know that can win the fight? Because what you just said, I don't want this to glance by too quick. You're more afraid of what's coming than you are what's in office.
Absolutely.
And right now people are terrified of what's in office. So that's a powerful statement times two that was made. So thank you for your transparency on that.
You think you could help us get Scott on the show?
Oh, 100%.
We'd love to have him. We had Victor on, obviously, and me and Micah have spent some time with Victor. You know, my take on it is I just don't see anybody having the highest amount of chance to win other than Victor. I see Victor as having the highest percentage likelihood to be able to actually go from winning the primaries to then winning in November if we're going to have a chance. That's pretty much my biggest thing. It just so happens to be an absolute benefit and bonus that Victor is actually somebody with real world experience and convictions, and he's grounded in his faith as well, and he's done a lot of good work. I've not met Scott Bottoms. Love to meet him. Love to have a conversation with him. And I'm sure that he would do an incredible, outstanding job of representing people with core values grounded in faith as governor in Colorado if he could win.
That's right.
Could he win? I mean, by a miracle, maybe.
Right. Right.
If some miracle or a door open, maybe.
Yeah.
I just don't know that it's the wisest option for us right now in how this state has continued to just go on a spiral downward to just put everything on hope that maybe this person wins. I really think that the difference between a lot of the candidates and Victor right now is Victor's coming with very strong numbers and a very strong battle plan, and he is doing it in a very untraditional way as he's running. A lot of the other people are kind of stuck in the more traditional mold still of wanting to run their race in a very political way. And I mean, I know that Victor is maybe potentially getting some flack for some of the ways he's not necessarily engaging in the more traditional political traditions. But I also think that there's something to be said about trying to lean into breaking a mold and trying to really bring about change. But we would love to have a conversation with Scott Bottoms. We'd love to have him on the show, talk to him about Colorado, talk to him about what his policies are, what he sees, where he's at right now, and also obviously be able to share faith with him and just talk with him. It'd be an awesome conversation. So if you could help facilitate that, that'd be amazing.
And I'll talk with them this morning about it. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Absolutely.
I'm going to text Lauren Bobert and get her on too.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
to get her take on some things.
Well,
So,
I'm just going to give you just a quick little 10 seconds about Congresswoman Bobert. All right. Let me tell you something about that woman. She obviously, she had changed into this district, into CD4. I had attended a few events with her, and then there was a time during the process, the campaign process, where she came to Douglas County Fairgrounds for a Castle Rock Republican breakfast, which I encourage you all to. Boy, that's the biggest plug I should be making right now. It's the third Friday of every month. It's held at the Douglas County Fairgrounds. $20, you get a hot meal, you get good people coming together. Look it up. It's on the Douglas County GOP website, so sign up for that. Anyway, she came out to that, and she started speaking specifically about issues that were very pressing right here in Castle Rock and right here in Douglas County. Now, I know that to some degree you say, well, okay, that's kind of what her job is, but I mean, that's really profound. I mean, CD4 is basically, here out to Kansas.
sure.
Right? I mean, it's huge.
It's massive.
She was very well educated. I talked with her after an event, and we had an event together. A lot of folks came out. And I'm telling you that there were a lot of folks that had gotten into the media hype machine, and they had a preconceived notion of who she is or what she stands for. After that, hearing her speak from her heart and hearing her speak about issues right here, I don't know that there's anybody in that room that didn't walk away a supporter of hers. She told me on the phone afterwards, she said, you know what, Max, if you can do me a favor, if you can fill a room with everybody that felt like they had to hold their nose and vote for me just because I was a Republican, she goes, that's who I want. Charlie Kirk did the same thing.
Yeah.
Charlie Kirk would say, if you disagree with me, come up front, because you're the one I want to talk. I want to talk to people that agree with me. I want to talk to people who disagree with me. Lauren Bobert was doing that a while ago. She was saying, hey, get me in a room with people that had to hold their nose, because she knows that she has the opportunity to be able to change the way people think about her. She's a force. She's a powerful woman. She's doing good things for Colorado.
Yeah, she's a firebrand, and for a couple obvious reasons. But once you remove that, I've been to dinner with her. I've hung out with her. We've sat down. We closed a restaurant with her and Eli Crane up in Windsor, where she lives. I think we sat there till 1 a.m. having a conversation. Then Eli was on the podcast next day at 7, after an hour and a half drive home. I'm in agreement with you. I mean, she is invested. She cares. She's had a couple trip hazards. She's had some speed bumps, but you know what? Show me somebody who hasn't.
That's right.
And then at the other hand, show me somebody who's willing to fight. And she's a fighter. I do agree wholeheartedly with you on that. So I'd love to get her on the show.
Well, take us out. if it's time, you'll do this at the conclusion of every show. So I bow my head and I'm with you 100% here.
You want to say the prayer?
No, I'd like to hear one.
right.
I'd like to hear one. I love to hear the sometimes they're a little partisan prayers that we get up at the house floor. I'm gonna be honest with you, because you can invite anybody to come up there and give a prayer. So I would love to hear what you've got to say to the Lord and to say to everybody right now.
Well, I'll close this out. Father God, thank you for the opportunity today to have Max on. Wonderful man, amazing family man, lovely wife, just a good gentleman all around. Tough role, tough job. I'd ask that you would protect him and both cloak him in protection as well as courage and strength and fortitude, as with all members of the House districts that are representing Colorado right now. I love what he said about truth, and we can't lie. We got to stand on the truth. We have to, as Brian said, have a steel spine when it comes to the things that we're facing. So I would ask that you would give Max both the courage and the wherewithal to read between the lines, the discernment that is needed, and the fortitude to stand strong in the fight. It is in your son's name I pray. Amen.
God bless both of you.
Amen. Thank you for being on
Thank
the
you,
show,
brother.
Max. We're going to have you sign the wall there before you head out, and let me get a camera on you as well.
I'll just go right here.
Pick your poison. It's a good signature.
Well,
I like that.
appreciate it.
I got the worst signature on the face.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate you. What'd you think of the sermon?
I carry a gun 'cause this world's gone